Every Life is America's pro-life diaper and wipes company. My family absolutely loves them. There's no harsh toxins, there's no chemicals. It's perfectly safe for your little one. We love Every Life, their mission, their vision, everything about them. Use my code VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. Hey y'all, welcome back to the podcast. I am Vashti Sarah, and today we are talking about breastfeeding, all things breastfeeding. I know this is a controversial topic for a lot of people. We have strong opinions about it, whether it's nursing, being holistic, or bottle feeding and doing formula. Today we're going to talk about breastfeeding though, and Cristen, our guest, I would consider an expert on this. She is all things counterculture, and I'm excited to see what she has to say and to encourage you listeners who are exploring the idea of breastfeeding. Maybe you're a new mom, maybe you're a seasoned mom, and this will open your eyes to the benefits of it. So Cristen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Hey, yes. Thank you so much for inviting me on today. So like Vashti introduced me, I am Cristen, and I'm on Instagram as Maternal Strength. And my main focus and desire is to really help new moms navigating this, because it is stressful. There is a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of back and forth, and it is a very emotional topic. Mm-hmm. So that is my main focus, and my page kind of formed itself in a way. I welcomed my first Earthside baby last May. So of course, naturally, he became my main focus in every way, including what I was posting about. So I was simply sharing what I was doing, what was working, what wasn't working, and the account sort of took off, and I noticed a trend. So new moms are out there, they're interested in learning, kind of getting back to our roots in all areas, if you will. Breastfeeding, baby wearing, no medications, no vaccines, not developmentally rushing our children, limiting chemicals, lowering our toxins, and even delaying solid food. So all of that became a focus. And we got a lot of interest and traction there. So that's where we started, and here we are.
I'm curious, before you had your Earthside baby, did you ever think you would end up here where you're more so on the holistic route? Was that ever a thought, like this is what I want and this is what I desire whenever I have a family? Or did it just kind of develop on its own when you had him?
It did develop on its own, because I was not raised any sort of holistic whatsoever. Okay. It was very unhealthy, like processed foods, Little Debbie's in our lunches. Like I didn't know going into this. And even when I had my baby, crunchy was a new word. And I was like, what is crunchy? What is this? And apparently I fall under that category, but you'll never hear me say I'm a crunchy mom. But it definitely developed just as we went about it.
I love that, because I feel like a lot of times there's just misconception. It's, oh, you've always thought that way, so you're stuck in your ways, but you develop that over time. You were raised differently, and you're deciding a different trend, a different stream for your kids and your family. But let's jump right into it. Can you explain the benefits of breastfeeding, both for the baby and the mom? And I know this is, you could probably go pretty extensively into this.
Absolutely. But I love that that's where you want to start, because I feel like it's one of those things where we know, but we don't know why. Like we know it's the best, but we don't know why. So it is a really good thing to dive into. Mm-hmm. Like we could spend the whole session just talking about the benefits, but I'll try to keep it brief. So like there's a reason it's always been referred to, breast milk has always been referred to as liquid gold. It cannot be replicated. There's no substitution. And that's where a lot of the emotion comes from, unfortunately, because there's just like, if a woman cannot or is having problems, it's like, well, I'm having a hard time. So like a mother's milk contains the exact nutrients her baby needs. If her baby catches a cold, the milk adjusts to meet those needs. It has more antibodies, the white blood cells and the IgAs are increased. And then when the baby gets better, the milk readjusts and those counts go back down. Wow. it contains immunological components that are actually helping the baby to keep from getting sick, that are constantly fighting whatever the baby is introduced to throughout the day. Because especially when it's taste time, they see a little dot on the floor, they put it in their mouth, and regardless of what it is, their body is already, because of the breast milk, they already know how to fight this off, even if it's not something they should be ingesting. So there's that side. And then, of course, as the baby grows, the needs change. And so the milk changes with it. And you can't see that in formula. There's no way. So that's just one of the miraculous things. Again, like we produce it, the mother produces it, and it changes with the baby as the baby's need changes. Wow. And even like later on in life, there's been studies to show it can reduce risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes for the baby, cardiovascular diseases. Like, it's just setting the baby off on the best feet possible for later in life. It's even been associated with reducing allergies, reducing asthma, chances of developing asthma. So that's sort of the baby side. I wanted to split it into two categories. That's everything, most of the things that the baby will benefit from.
Right.
Of course, there's a lot of other things. So for the mother, it's very, very healing. It's a healing process, just being that close to your baby, having that bonding. There's an actual release of hormones in the act of breastfeeding. It can lower the risk of postpartum depression. It aids with weight loss because milk production burns a lot of calories, and it's a double-edged sword because you do eat more because of the calories. But if you are dialed into your nutrition, it can help with the weight loss, especially getting back down to just the postpartum or the pre-pregnancy side, that you were. And it helps the uterus get back to its pre-pregnancy size. It can even reduce the risk of the woman developing breast cancer later in life or ovarian cancers. So there's so many benefits. It definitely cannot be overlooked.
Yeah. Something you mentioned that it helps with the mom, and I wanted to touch on this a little bit, is what I've noticed in myself is if I'm having a very flustered day or like a very overwhelming day and I nurse my daughter, for some reason I get calm. And I don't know if it's that bond, and she could be screaming her head off, which is very rare. But yes, it will make me a little bit flustered in the moment. But when she starts nursing and she calms down, I don't know if it's what she's releasing, what I'm releasing, but I get calm too. And I look at her and I'm like, oh, she's so innocent. You know, she's such a cute little baby. She's innocent. And how can I be mad at her? And I tell my husband often, I don't ever get mad at her. I get frustrated at the situation. Yeah. And I believe breastfeeding is what helps that, because there's that hormone release, there's that connection between you and your child. And I don't know, you just don't get angry. At least for me, I don't get angry at her. I just get frustrated at the situation that she's overly flustered or tired or whatever it may be, or maybe it might feel like an inconvenience at the time, but I don't ever get angry. Yes, I'm 8 months in. That could change, but for now, I feel like that's helped significantly. So what would you say? How can mothers prepare for a successful breastfeeding experience after giving birth? Because I feel like a lot of moms, this is a challenge. And one of my close friends, actually, she strictly breastfeeds, and she told me, Vashti, my biggest advice to you is to don't give up. Push through the being uncomfortable, push through the painful part of it, because she believes, and she felt like a lot of moms give up too quickly and then decide to go with formula. So what would you say, how to prepare to be successful in breastfeeding?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got to know in the bottom of your heart why you're wanting to do this, because throughout your whole journey, even I'm already 15 months into this, and we're still going strong. But even to this day, there are people who are like, "Oh, you don't need to," or formula is really good these days, or just something. And maybe they have the best intentions, but for what you're trying to do, that's really counterproductive. So you've got to know in the bottom of your heart why you're wanting this, why you're willing to do the hard work, because it is hard work. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done, and I've done a lot of hard things.
Yeah.
So, and ask around, like talk to other mothers who have gone down that path. But you also want to protect yourself in that way too, because if you are just asking anyone, you will find those that like, yeah, it didn't work for me. Don't even, so that's another negative road that could happen. So, something that really helped me too is I had a book that I was reading while I was pregnant. I think it was called What to Expect When You're Expecting by Heidi Murkoff. Love that book. Definitely gave me something to do, but there were a lot of good tips in there. And start reading up on it now, even blogs, there's social media pages, all the things. But I think primarily, here's the thing, like don't take any piece of it as law, because there's so much out there, like, and it's very personable. So something that worked for me may not work for the next person. And there's a lot to it. So take it all with a grain of salt, as my mom used to say, and be spiritually and mentally grounded, because I firmly believe it is as much a mental and spiritual feat as it is physically.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it normal for the milk to take a long time to come in? Or does it just vary female to female? It depends on what you did before the baby came, nutrition, or is it a combination of all of that?
I would say it can vary. Like it depends on what the mother's doing, because I've seen people that will pump while they're pregnant to try to get the colostrum going to boost their milk supply. I didn't know any of that this go around. So I came into it very naively, because I was like, I'm going to have a baby and then I'm just going to breastfeed and that'll be that. So I did not know what I was getting myself into. At this point, I'm like, oh, okay, so there's a lot more to it. It's a little more complicated.
I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah. So, and my baby was almost a month late, and my milk was still having a hard time coming in. So, I mean, I think it does have a lot to do with what we're doing leading up to it. And I think something that helped was as soon as I gave birth, they put the baby directly on me and like tried to get him to latch immediately. Yeah. And like, I just figured that was normal, but from talking to so many mothers, like that doesn't happen. Like they take the baby, they do whatever. And like the baby just came out of you from being in there for 9 months. And so I think you've got to put the baby, like you've got to nurse as soon as possible.
Right.
Because I mean, it's just that whole transition.
Yeah. With Sarah, what they did, and I only have one child, similar to you, I came into pregnancy, and after I delivered Sarah, she came 3 weeks early, actually. I just assumed, I just went in clueless. I was like, well, when she pops out, we'll just start nursing. And I'm thankful I had a very holistic doctor. He immediately placed her on me. And funnily enough, she, you know how babies are, they like move their mouths around trying to look and search. She started doing that and searching, and she didn't latch immediately, but she already understood the concept. She was looking for comfort somewhere. And I'd say that, I mean, obviously the doctors are pretty insistent. Hey, every 2 hours, or try to get her to get used to it. But in my experience, and I think it's very healthy that they put the child on you immediately and create that bond, because they were in you for 9 months. They need immediate touch and connection with who's my protector, who should I trust, who is my comfort. But so what are some effective techniques for latching, positioning, and all of that? I had a hard time, I'd say, the first day or two. And a lady at the hospital came in and she was trying to like show me different positions. I personally just went with whatever my daughter thought was comfortable. And I was like, you know what? I feel like this works for many women, but for me, it didn't. But what would you say are some effective techniques that you found for yourself, but also, for other women have worked?
Yeah, so we did, but in the first few days, it was a little hard getting him to latch. And then I want to talk like, again, that book that I mentioned, What to Expect When You're Expecting, like she goes over a lot, and like she even does little graphics to show you what she's talking about.
Yeah.
It's really hard to explain without, showing.
Right.
Do that. So I will say the biggest thing is to make sure the baby's mouth is wide open. And to ensure that they get a deep latch, because coming into it, I thought, oh, he just needs like a little nibble, but the deeper the latch, the more, like, it helps your production too, but that's the grip that you're wanting. And so you kind of have to hold back a little bit until they open their mouth more. And it's such an amazing process. Like, because the baby, he doesn't know anything, but like your body language, and you're like working with him to get him to respond. And it's like, wow, he knows what to do. So if I wait to like feed him a little bit, he'll open his mouth a little wider. And then there you go, you give it. And something I learned too is to bring the baby to you, not to lean over, and at least in the beginning, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
And to use your hand and like guide the whole thing. And like you said, like you really just need to find what's comfortable for you, what's comfortable for your baby, because if your baby's not comfortable, they're not going to want to eat.
True. So how can a mother know if her baby is getting enough milk? I find it comical whenever we take Sarah in for her appointments. How much is your baby eating? I don't know. I have no clue. She's full. She burps right after, and she has a big old pouch after she eats. I have no clue how much she's eating. So how do you know you're getting enough milk? Your baby's eating it.
Oh, that is so funny. I had the same reaction when our first pediatrician would ask that. I was like, how am I supposed to know? We're breastfeeding. Yeah. And like he would press for an answer, and I was like, so I had to think about this one, because I'm like, well, I mean, how do we know? So one of the key things is to really watch your baby while you're nursing him or her. I had a boy, so it's just natural to say him. So like, want to listen. Listen for swallowing. Watch your baby's cheeks. Make sure they're rounded and not like tucked in. And you want to make sure their mouth is like, the lips are also over it, not tucked in. Because that's what my baby was doing in the beginning. I don't know if they would call it a tie. Okay. We were in Germany, so like they approach it a lot differently than they do in the States, which is something I'm very grateful for.
Baby in Germany?
Yeah, so I was pregnant and they gave birth while we were in Germany.
No way!
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It was fun. Yeah, it was a good experience. I'm thankful, like, because I just didn't know anything going into it. So I'm very thankful I was in Europe for European medicine and not here, where I probably would have made a lot of mistakes because I just didn't know any better. So
I feel like we should talk about your birth story in Germany sometime.
Oh gosh. Well, we definitely should. I will need to do a little preparing now, because it's been almost a year and a half.
All right, let's do it. Okay, back to breastfeeding.
Yeah. So I wanted to note some things to look for if your baby is underfed, because like with breastfeeding, that is a concern, because you really don't know how much or how little they're getting. So the overall signs are, just crankiness, inconsolable crying, not being very alert or active when they're awake. So like kind of just a dazed eye glance, like they're not smiling, they're not looking around, and like their vision is struggling already, but they should still be alert. Unfortunately, these also coincide with post-vaccination issues. So there's that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Pumping. What is the role of pumping? Is it right? Is it not right? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So, I've always seen it as, helpful, I guess is a word I would use. I know there are a lot of moms I run into, because most of my page is like holistic approaches. So I talk to a lot of moms who don't want to pump or not interested in pumping. Yeah. So like I understand that, but I can only say what I've done, and I pump. That's how I was able to increase. Because it's very, very hard to increase, at least I would say, by just with your baby, because you can't make them eat if they're not hungry. You can do all the skin to skin contact you want, but they still need that emptying, So I will say it's necessary if you're needing or wanting to increase your supply. And like I said, like it helped me a lot because there were times when my baby wouldn't eat as much, or maybe he was taking a longer nap and I just knew it was time to pump. And it gave some flexibility because not in the beginning, of course, but like once I established a supply and was able to put milk in the freezer, we had that as an option if I had to do something, or if we were both going out and I didn't want to whip it out.
So I pumped in the beginning because I just had an oversupply. I was always engorged. I had mastitis twice, which is miserable. But I just always was full. And so I pumped almost all the way through first and second month. And I had so much milk in the freezer. And then I quit pumping because we kind of got into a rhythm and stuff. But I don't know why, but on both ends, there is stigma towards pumping and there is stigma to strictly breastfeeding. I don't know if it's just moms just being overly critical with the other. On one end, it's pumping is convenient. It helps with increasing your supply. This is a great thing. And then on another end, it's pumping isn't traditional. Pumping is just an excuse, and we've been doing this for centuries. Why pump? So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, like why there's so much stigma towards either one end of the spectrum.
Yeah, like I'm right there with you because with that being a lot of what I talk about on my page, I also get the same thing. I'm like, what is this?
I don't know. I don't think, and I think it's just the nature of society too. We're very opinionated. We, and I hate using the term Karens because you don't know whose mom's name is Karen, and she might be a very person. But I do believe there are a lot of Karens who just have an opinion and want to say and bring down. So I think it's just humanity just having an opinion about everything. But like you said, I like using the term pumping as it aids or it helps or it what was the exact word you used?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. Helpful?
It's helpful. There we go. Yeah. It's helpful.
Yeah.
So we're closing out this first segment, what are some myths about breastfeeding, milk supply that you'd like to debunk before we enter into the second segment?
Yeah, so I've seen it all at this point. It's been really crazy, and it's a sensitive topic. I get it. There's a lot of emotion behind it. We're way too quick to say like I can't produce or I just couldn't produce enough. Because statistically, that's a hard word. Statistically speaking, there are a lot fewer women who actually cannot produce than we think.
Wow.
I think part of it is just, I think a lot of it is the American system. Like we're just from the get-go, it's like we're like conditioned to think we may not be able to, and that's okay. And like it is okay if you actually can't, but it's a lot more rare than we think.
Yeah. Okay. I know like the rarity is if you have inverted nipples or if you have something underlying in your breasts, but you're right. And one of my close friends is right. We give up to it easily. And that's not a shame on moms at all. I don't ever want to come off as that. But the reality is, and let's be honest on it, being honest can hurt sometimes. I do believe we give up way too soon. And we fall back on the convenience of formula. And if only, I wish more people would read into what is placed in these formulas. It's mind-blowing, and you don't realize these things lead to autism, different mental health disabilities, some physical disabilities, gut issues when they grow up and get older. So I just wish more moms would dive into that more and not quit quickly. So how can a mom balance breastfeeding and pumping if they're returning back to work?
Yeah, so I would say even before you take maternity leave, have that conversation with your employer. Let them know that you're intending on breastfeeding and that you'll be pumping and you'll need those accommodations. Thankfully now, like, we live in a time that employers have to allow you to pump. They can't tell you, no, sorry. Granted, you're probably not going to be getting paid, but they can't tell you you can't go pump, or they can't penalize you for going to pump. And it is uncomfortable at first. Like, it's still uncomfortable for me when I have to be like, okay, it's time for me to go pump. Is that okay? Like,
with me.
I have to apologize, or like, oh, I have to give up pumping because I'm going to work.
Right.
It's not like that anymore. So talk to your employer, lay out the times you might need, and be open with them. Like, hopefully you have that kind of relationship with them, but just be like, I'm going to be new at this. I don't know. I'm figuring this out. It's hard. Just help myself, and give me the time and space. I'll put in the extra, like, if I pump for an hour and a half, obviously not getting paid, like, I will try to stay and make up that work or whatever. So just have that conversation, and don't let your emotions get in the way of not wanting to talk about it.
I completely agree. Thankfully, I work 2.5 days a week in the office. Unfortunately, Sarah will not, for the life of her. And maybe this is me just admitting now that maybe I gave up too quickly, but Sarah will not take a bottle for the life of her. So that's why I actually quit pumping. So my husband drives during the lunch hour and come and bring Sarah to nurse during lunchtime, and then takes her back home, and then comes back again between 4 and 5, and she nurses, and then we go home together. So maybe I gave up. I tried the most expensive bottle, the cheapest bottle. She just won't, and it's comical. I mean, all you can do is just laugh. She'll just stick her tongue out and she'll leave it there. She won't put the bottle in her mouth. Or she'll scream the whole time, and an hour of screaming until she falls asleep, wake back up screaming because she's starving. So I say that to say I'm so thankful I have a very understanding work environment, and everybody knows in the office the boss is coming to eat. So we're the But you're right. Just be honest, be open, transparent with your employer, and let them know, this is the journey that I'm on. I'm trying to figure it out, and just work with me, and I will get the job done. But I also need flexibility in taking care of my child. But we're closing this segment out, this first part of breastfeeding. What resources would you say are available? You mentioned the book. For breastfeeding mothers who encounter difficulties?
Yeah, so there are a lot of lactation consultants out there. I would encourage you to do a little bit of research before going with one, or maybe like go for one session, test it out, see how you feel with that one, try another one, because it's easy to get that title.
Yeah.
I looked it up. I was like, because I know from my experience, but I still have people like, what's your certification? But you have women with these certifications that have never walked through it. So it's like, it's hard, so like all I have to do is attend a 5-day course and I get a certification. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm like, if you want the title, here's the title.
Right.
But so that's one option. Postpartum doulas are a huge thing now. Since having a baby, like, I'm seeing a lot of moms having a doula, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. So that's helpful. They are trained to kind of be knowledgeable around all areas. There's even like WIC programs, the WIC, like women, infants, children. There's have peer counseling. They have free weekly breastfeeding help clinics. So just find that. I think every town has like a social security office where you can find WIC programs for that.
Okay, cool beans. And I'll include all those resources. If you could send those too, if you have any specific links, I will include that in description so that if you're interested and you want to get on your breastfeeding journey and fight through it, we'll have that available. But we're closing this segment. Cristen, thank you for opening us up with all things breastfeeding. And next segment, we'll talk about you.
All right.
7 Weeks is America's pro-life coffee. It's premium coffee delivered right to your doorsteps. All roast available, and it's absolutely delicious. Start your morning off with 7 Weeks coffee. It's not just drinking coffee, it's drinking coffee with a purpose. Use my code VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order.